With me now is Senator Mark Warner. He's a Democrat from Virginia, vice chair of the Senate Intel Committee, and he joins me now. Senator Warner, you have been a preacher of caution throughout this. Mueller today, do you now look at the Mueller report as a direct referral to Congress, that was the intent of the report, which was not clear, I think, for a lot of us over the last 2 months?
I'm not sure, Chuck, I'd go that far. I would clearly, though, say that there's no way this White House, although I'm sure they will, can continue to claim that the Mueller report exonerated the president. I think if there were two major messages that came out of Mueller today. One was he did not exonerate the president. He was clear about that. He did make that referral to Congress. And the other, in the area where I've been focused, which he started his comments and then ended his comments, where let's not take our eyes off the ball. Russia attacked our democracy. Right. And they attacked it through our election system, through social media, through weaponizing information. And what I would hope we would agree on, even if we don't agree on all of the components of what Trump did or didn't do, is let's make sure they don't do it again in 2020. And that means you got to pass an election security bill that allows a paper ballot auditable trail. Right. Let's put some guardrails around Facebook. And let's go ahead, even if 140 contacts between Russians and Trump officials didn't reach the level of conspiracy, let's on a going forward basis, make sure if a foreign government or foreign agents try to interfere in a campaign, there ought to be an affirmative obligation from that campaign to tell the law enforcement, to tell the FBI.
Where are these bills? Because I have, for the life of me, I don't understand that if you read the declinations in part one of the Mueller report, as I've said, if you read them carefully, and I think you and I have discussed this is not Mueller saying laws weren't broken. This is Mueller saying the laws were ambiguous. The laws were essentially not written for the modern era. It was not easy to figure out how you priced this and what was this. It was begging for an update, a renewal. And I don't understand where all the legislation is. Well, Chuck, the House can introduce legislation and make everybody vote on this. Where is that?
Well, Chuck, I can't speak to the House. I can speak to what I'm doing in the Senate. Right. I've got legislation called the FIRE Act that would require in any federal campaign that if you get contacted by a foreign agent of a foreign government and they offer you information, you got to report it to law enforcement. I've got legislation that's actually bipartisan called the Secure Elections Act, as well as a Democrat-only bill that was passed in the House already that would put in strict security around our electoral system. And I've got 3 or 4 pieces of legislation around social media that would start to put guardrails around the Facebooks and the Googles and the Twitters, because we're seeing what they did in 2016, but we're seeing not even what Russians did, but what others did just last week with a video of Speaker Pelosi. And that's just, that's yesterday's technology. Wait till you see the bad guys use what's called, deep fake technology, where you can put your face and your voice on a body that has nothing to do with you. And the ramifications of that are huge, and we got to get ahead of it.
What is your bar for impeachment, for opening the inquiry? I know you're a potential juror, so I understand that, and please don't use that as the cop-out here. I would like to know, what is your bar for seeing an inquiry opened?
I think Speaker Pelosi, in a very challenging environment, has done exactly the right thing. Let's go ahead and continue to get more information out, get more information into the bloodstream. One of the reasons, as somebody who's reviewed the Mueller report, I wish more Americans would review it. One of the reasons why I think Mueller ought to testify. And as more data points come out, as she said, I think today, everything's on the table. But I'm not prepared today to, and frankly, I will default to that excuse that the House would have to launch the investigation. But I think Pelosi's navigated this pretty darn well so far.
Is there a point, though, where let me ask it this way. Is it going to be easier to defend making the decision to open an impeachment inquiry in 5 years, or harder?
Chuck, that's a great question. I don't think we know at this moment in time, because if we get more information, as more information comes out, that will become clearer. But you know, as you just said with Eric, with your last guest, you know, the idea that Trump may want to lure into this back and forth where I don't think all of the American people are at this point. Right. You know, I understand that.
What about the issue of Bill Barr and impeaching him? Has that popped up or in your mind?
I would say this. I voted against Bill Barr. I thought once he got in, maybe being kind of an establishment guy, that he would do the right thing. He has not done the right thing. He has acted simply as a lawyer for Donald Trump. I think he ought to resign. Whether that goes to the level of impeachment, I'll leave that to the folks in the House. But I have been bitterly, bitterly disappointed on how badly he has done as Attorney General. And what, frankly, terrifies me, and I put out, tried to put a marker down on this with the intelligence community to say I will have their back. I don't want a politicized Attorney General deciding what part of the Russia investigation intelligence ought to be released, because I fear, frankly, for the men and women who work for our intelligence community and folks who may work on our behalf abroad, that their lives could be put in jeopardy by an Attorney General that might politicize that intelligence.
Senator Mark Warner, I'm going to leave it there. The Vice Chair of the Senate Intel Committee, you guys are still doing your investigation. We look forward to those reports.
Chuck,
we look forward to those reports.
Investigation in
before
town.
the 4th of July, man. Let's see them before the 4th, will you?
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you, Senator. Coming up, the pressure for impeachment is only... Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.